The year was 2347, and humans had spread across 3 star systems. They built stations and colonies on distant worlds. They mined asteroids and lived among the stars. Epsilon Station was one of these places. It was a mining outpost on the edge of the expanse. 1,200 people called it home. There were miners, engineers, doctors, teachers, and families who had built their lives far from Earth. Lieutenant Cole was 26 years old. He had brown hair, tired eyes, and hands that knew how to hold a rifle. He had joined the military at 18 because he wanted to protect people. He had never seen real war. That was about to change. Cole was off duty when they arrived. He was sitting in the recreation hall with his squad, playing cards and drinking coffee. Sergeant Maria Vance was winning, as she always did. Corporal Danny was complaining about his bad luck. Private was laughing at both of them. They were good soldiers and better friends. The station's alarms tore through the air like a scream. Red lights flashed. A voice came over the speakers, calm but urgent. Unknown ships had appeared in orbit. Contact had been lost with the outer defenses. Cole was on his feet before the message ended. His squad followed him without question. The Warren species. They had hard shells like beetles and razor-sharp limbs that could cut through metal. Their empire covered 40 star systems. They had conquered 18 different species. Some they enslaved, others they destroyed completely. Their queen, the Eternal, had ruled for 300 years. She had never lost a war. Humans knew almost nothing about the. There had been rumors, distant reports, warnings from other species. But no one had expected them to come to Epsilon Station. No one had expected them to come at all. Within an hour, they had breached the outer hull. Cole watched through security cameras as the creatures poured into the station. They moved fast, faster than anything he had ever seen. Their claws cut through doors, walls, and people. The screams came through the speakers before someone had the mercy to turn them off. The station's garrison was 200 Marines, good soldiers, well-trained. They held their positions and fought hard, but they were endless. For every one that fell, 10 more came through the breach. The garrison was overwhelmed in the first assault. Cole made a decision. He could not save everyone. He could not save most people, but he could save some. He gathered what survivors he could find. He moved through corridors filled with smoke and blood. He kicked open doors and pulled people from hiding places. He shot warriors that got in his way and kept moving, always moving. By the time he reached the cargo bay, he had 37 people with him. Only 8 were soldiers. The rest were civilians, some of them children. Maria had taken a wound to her shoulder, but she kept her rifle up. Danny was carrying a little girl on his back, was helping an old man who could barely walk. There were emergency shuttles in the cargo bay, 6 of them. Each could hold 5 people, room for 30. 37 people, 30 seats. Cole looked at his squad. They understood without words. Soldiers stayed, civilians went. He picked 6 volunteers, Maria, Danny, and 3 others. Grant was a quiet man who never missed a shot. Ben Torres was the biggest soldier Cole had ever met, strong enough to hold a door by himself. Cross was small and fast and deadly with a knife. 7 soldiers, 1 corridor. They would hold it until the shuttles were away. The civilians did not want to go. Some of them cried. Some of them begged. A woman grabbed Cole's arm and asked him to come with them. He gently removed her hand and told her to get on the shuttle. The shuttles launched. Cole watched them go on the security screen. Then he turned to face the corridor. They came like a wave. Cole had never known fighting like this. It was not battle. It was survival. It was holding the line when every part of his body screamed at him to run. They were strong and fast, and they did not feel fear. But Cole and his squad had something the aliens did not understand. They had something to protect. Maria fired until her rifle overheated. Then she picked up a dead alien's weapon and kept firing. Danny stood like a wall, cutting down anything that got close, moved through the chaos like a ghost, appearing where she was needed most. took headshots from 50 meters away. Ben held the center of the line, roaring with every swing of his massive arms, slipped behind enemy lines and opened throats before they knew she was there. One by one they fell. Was the first to go. A blade caught him in the chest. He died with his rifle still firing. Was next, overwhelmed by 3 warriors at once. She took 2 of them with her. Ben fell holding the center, his body blocking the corridor even in death. Danny pushed Cole behind him when the aliens broke through. He fought with his bare hands at the end, buying seconds with his life. Maria went down beside him, still cursing, still fighting. Was the last of his squad to fall. She looked at Cole, smiled, and said something he could not hear over the noise. Then she was gone. Cole stood alone. His rifle was empty. He used it as a club. When it broke, he picked up an alien blade. When he lost that, he used his fists. He fought until his hands were broken and his vision was dark. He fought because he did not know how to stop. They did not kill him. They had conquered 18 species. They had broken warriors and crushed armies. But they had never seen anything like this human. This small, soft creature that would not stop, would not surrender, would not die. They took him alive. Far away, the shuttles reached a human patrol ship. The survivors told their story. They showed recordings from the station's security system. The recordings spread across human space like fire. People watched Cole and his squad hold that corridor. They watched 7 soldiers fight an army. They watched one man stand alone against impossible odds, broken and bleeding but still swinging. Cole became a name. It was whispered in military academies. It was spoken in bars and homes and ships across 3-star systems. Parents told their children about the soldiers of Epsilon Station. A legend was born that day. It was born in blood and fire and defiance. It was born in a corridor filled with alien bodies and human sacrifice. And somewhere in the darkness of space, aboard a prison ship, Cole was still alive, still fighting, still refusing to fall. The Queen of the would learn his name soon enough, and when she did, she would understand what humanity was capable of. But that was still to come. For now there was only the legend growing stronger with every telling, and there was Cole, alone in the dark, waiting for his chance. Cole spent 7 years in captivity. 7 years of darkness, pain, and endless resistance. The prison ship took him to a world called Al. It was a harsh planet with red skis and black soil. They used it to hold captured warriors from all the species they had conquered. Thousands of prisoners lived and died there, broken by labor and torture. Cole was different from the other prisoners. They could see it from the beginning. He did not beg. He did not break. He did not give them what they wanted. Queen heard about him within weeks of his arrival. Reports reached her throne room on Prime, the heart of her empire. A human had killed over 80 of her warriors before being captured. A human had refused to submit despite severe punishment. A human was becoming a problem. Was curious. She had ruled for 3 centuries and conquered 18 species. She had seen brave warriors before. They all broke eventually. Everyone broke. She ordered Cole brought to her arena. The arena was where they sent their most interesting prisoners. It was a massive structure built for entertainment and terror. Captured warriors from different species were forced to fight each other. The winners lived another day. The losers became food. Cole fought his first arena battle against a warrior from a species called the. They were large, covered in thick scales, and known for their strength. This one had survived 12 arena fights. Cole killed him in under a minute. The watching from their seats fell silent. They had never seen a human fight before. They had expected something weak, something easy to kill. Instead, they saw a predator. Queen watched the recording of that fight many times. She watched the way Cole moved, the way he found weaknesses, the way his eyes never showed fear. She became obsessed with understanding him. She ordered her interrogators to break him. They tried for months. They used pain, hunger, isolation, and drugs. Cole endured everything. When they starved him, he caught insects and ate them raw. When they beat him, he healed and came back stronger. When they put him in darkness, he meditated and waited. 3 interrogators requested transfer to other duties. One took his own life. They could not break Cole, and the failure destroyed them. The arena became Cole's life. He fought every kind of warrior that could throw at him. He learned their fighting styles, their weaknesses, their fears. He became something the prisoners had never seen before: hope. Other prisoners began to watch him. They began to believe that maybe, just maybe, it was possible to resist. Cole noticed this. He was careful, but he began to organize. In his second year, he met a woman named Grace Palmer. Grace was a scientist who studied alien life. She had been working on a research station near space when her team was captured. She was brilliant, brave, and very angry. They had killed her colleagues. She wanted revenge. Cole found her in the labor camps, working in the mines. She was thin and weak, but her eyes burned with determination. He protected her from the other prisoners and the guards. In return, she taught him everything she knew about the. Grace had spent years studying their biology and society. She knew their strengths, but more importantly, she knew their weaknesses. They were connected to their queen through a psychic link. It was not just loyalty or culture, it was biology. The queen produced chemical signals that spread through her entire species. These signals gave them purpose, coordination, and unity. Without the queen, they would fragment. They would become confused, lost, unable to work together. Cole listened to Grace carefully. He asked questions. He made plans. In his fourth year, Cole met an unlikely ally. Was a warrior, but he was different from the others. He had been born with a mutation that weakened his connection to the queen. He could still feel her presence, but it was distant, like a whisper instead of a command. This made him an outcast among his own people. The other treated with suspicion and contempt. He was assigned to guard the arena fighters because it was considered shameful work. He watched Cole fight many times, and he began to feel something strange. Respect approached Cole one night in his cell. He did not come as a guard. He came as someone looking for answers. "Why do you keep fighting?" asked. His voice was rough, his words slow. Speaking human language was difficult for his mandibles. "You cannot win, you cannot escape. Why not accept death?" Cole looked at the alien for a long moment. "Because giving up means they win," he said. "I would rather die fighting than live as a slave." Did not understand. His species followed the queen without question. Choice was not something they valued, but something in Cole's words struck him. He returned the next night with more questions. Over months, an unlikely friendship formed. Taught Cole about society, their military structure, their technology. Cole taught about humanity, about freedom, about choosing your own path. In his sixth year, Cole decided it was time to escape. He had spent years building a network among the prisoners. He had Grace to help him understand the enemy. He had to guide them through security. He had 47 prisoners ready to risk everything for freedom. The plan was dangerous. They would have to fight through a military installation, steal a ship, and fly through enemy space. Most of them would probably die. Cole gathered his people in secret. He looked at their faces, human and alien alike. They were thin, broken in body but not in spirit. "I will not lie to you," Cole said. "Many of us will not survive, but those who die will die free. They will die fighting, and those who live will carry our story to the stars." Grace stood beside him, her hand on his arm. She had become more than his ally over the years. She had become his reason to survive. "We go tomorrow," Cole said. "Rest tonight, remember why you fight, and when the time comes, do not hesitate." The prisoners dispersed into the shadows. Cole stayed behind with. "You could die for this," Cole told them. "Your own people will hunt you." His mandibles clicked softly. "I have never belonged to my people. Perhaps I was meant to help yours." Cole clasped the alien's forelimb. "When I come back," he said, "I am coming for the Queen." Made a sound that Cole had learned was laughter. "I know, that is why I helped you. She deserves to know fear. You will teach her." That night Cole did not sleep. He lay in his cell and thought about Epsilon Station. He thought about Maria, Danny, and the others who had died holding that corridor. He thought about the promise he had made to himself. Their deaths would mean something. He would make sure of it. Tomorrow, the escape would begin. Tomorrow, Cole would take the first step toward becoming the nightmare that would haunt the Empire. The Queen did not know it yet, but her end was coming. It wore a human face, and it had spent 7 years learning how to kill her. The escape from Al began at midnight. Cole moved through the shadows like a ghost. Behind him came 47 prisoners, human and alien alike. They had spent months preparing for this moment. They had stolen weapons piece by piece, hidden supplies in secret places, memorized patrol routes and security codes. Now it was time. Had disabled the alarms in their section of the camp. He stood at the rendezvous point, his alien face impossible to read. He handed Cole a data chip. "Ship locations," said. "Security codes for the hangar. After that, you are on your own." Cole took the chip. "Come with us." "I cannot." Looked toward the distant towers of the main compound. "Someone must stay behind to cover your escape. If they discover you too soon, you will never reach the ships." Grace stepped forward. Over the years, she had lost her fear of the. She had learned to see them as individuals, not monsters. "Thank you," she said for everything. The alien's mandibles clicked softly. "Survive. That will be thanks enough." He turned to Cole. "When your people tell stories of this night, remember that not all chose to be your enemy." Cole nodded. There was nothing more to say. Disappeared into the darkness, and the escapees began to move. The first guards they encountered never saw them coming. Cole had trained his people well. They moved in silence, striking fast and hard, leaving no one alive to raise the alarm. They were dangerous, but they had grown careless. They did not expect their prisoners to fight back. The compound was huge, a maze of corridors and chambers built into the rocky landscape of Al. Cole led his group through tunnels that stank of chemicals and fear. They passed holding cells where other prisoners watched with hollow eyes. There was no room to take them. Cole could only promise himself that he would return someday. Grace walked beside him, a stolen rifle in her hands. She had never been a soldier, but 7 years of captivity had changed her. She knew where to aim, where they were weakest. She had taught Cole, and now she put that knowledge to use herself. They reached the first checkpoint after 2 hours. A dozen guards stood between them and the next section of the compound. Cole studied them for a moment, then gave the signal. The fight was brutal and quick. 3 prisoners died in the first exchange of fire. Cole himself took a blade across his ribs, a wound that would have killed a lesser man. He kept fighting, kept moving, kept his people alive. By dawn, they had reached the hangar. They had ships there, fast and well-armed. Most were too large for the escapees to crew, but there were smaller vessels, scout ships designed for quick missions. Cole picked the best 3 and began loading his people aboard. That was when the alarms finally sounded. Had bought them 6 hours. 6 precious hours that had carried them across miles of enemy territory. But now they knew, and they were coming. Cole could hear them in the corridors, hundreds of clawed feet clicking against metal floors. He could feel them through the walls, a wave of rage and hunger closing in from every direction. "Everyone on the ships," Cole shouted, "now." The prisoners scrambled aboard. Cole stayed at the hangar doors, rifle raised, buying time with every shot. Grace was beside him, firing with steady hands. 2 other fighters joined them, a human named Victor and an alien from a species Cole had never learned the name of. They called him Stone because his skin was gray and hard. They poured through the corridors. Cole killed the first wave, then the second. His rifle overheated and he grabbed another. The hangar floor was slick with alien blood. Victor went down with a blade in his throat. Stone lasted longer, his tough hide absorbing wounds that would have killed any human, but even he had limits. He fell defending the second ship, his body blocking the door long enough for the last prisoners to get aboard. "Cole," Grace screamed from the lead ship, "we have to go." Cole fired 3 more shots, then ran. He leaped through the closing hatch as plasma bolts scorched the air around him. The ship shuddered and lifted off, smashing through the hangar doors and climbing into the red sky of Al. Behind them, the other 2 ships followed. Behind them, the prison compound grew small. Behind them was probably already dead, sacrificed so that 44 prisoners could fly free. The journey through space took 3 months. They had no navigation charts, limited fuel, and damaged ships. They hid in asteroid fields and behind dead moons. They stole supplies from unmanned outposts. They ran from every patrol they encountered. People died along the way. Wounds became infected. Food ran short. 2 of the alien prisoners did not survive the journey through regions of space their biology could not handle. But Cole kept them moving. He kept them hopping. He told them stories about Earth, about humanity, about a future where they would be free. Grace helped him, translating for the aliens, caring for the sick, holding together a group that should have fallen apart. When they finally crossed into human space, 39 survivors remained. The United Earth Coalition patrol ship that found them could not believe what it was seeing. 3 battered scout ships, transmitting human emergency codes, crewed by escaped prisoners who had been given up for dead years ago. Cole stepped off his ship and onto the deck of a human vessel for the first time in 7 years. He was thin and exhausted, but his eyes were clear and his voice was strong. "I need to speak with your commanding officer," he said. "We have a war to win." The news of Cole's return spread across human space within days. The hero of Epsilon Station, alive. The man who had held the corridor, who had been captured and tortured and had escaped from the heart of the Empire. The legend was back. The United Earth Coalition had been at war with them for 5 years. It was not going well. Human colonies had fallen. Allied species had been conquered. They advanced slowly but steadily, and nothing seemed able to stop them. Cole was offered retirement, a quiet life, a chance to heal. He refused. "I did not survive 7 years of hell to sit on a beach," he told the admirals. "I know the enemy. I know how they think, how they fight, how they can be beaten. Let me use that knowledge." They gave him a choice, any command he wanted. He chose something new. Within a year, he had formed a special unit. They called themselves the Unbroken. They were volunteers, every one of them. Soldiers who had lost everything to the survivors who wanted revenge. Warriors from allied species who believed in Cole's mission. Grace Palmer became his second-in-command. She had spent 7 years learning to hate but she had also learned something more valuable: understanding. She knew the enemy better than anyone alive, and she used that knowledge like a weapon. The Unbroken did not fight like regular soldiers. They struck behind enemy lines, targeting supply routes and communication centers. They destroyed the psychic amplifiers that connected warriors to their queen. They appeared from nowhere, killed everything in their path, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They began to fear them. They began to fear one name above all others. Cole, the one who had escaped, the one who would not die, the one who was coming for their queen. In the war rooms of Prime, that name became a curse. In the barracks of warriors, it became a warning. In the throne room of Queen herself, it became something she had never felt before. Fear. The legend of Epsilon Station had grown into something more. Cole was no longer just a survivor. He was a symbol. He was hope for humanity and terror for its enemies. And he was just getting started. Queen the Eternal sat upon her throne in the heart of Prime. The throne room was massive, built to show the power of the empire. Giant pillars rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Banners hung from the walls, each one representing a conquered species. The floor was made from the bones of fallen enemies, polished smooth by centuries of use. Was 3 centuries old. She had hatched in a time when her species controlled only 5 systems. She had led them to glory, expanding the empire through war and cunning. 18 species had fallen to her armies. 40 star systems bowed to her will. She was not merely a ruler. She was a god to her people. Around her stood her council of war minds, the greatest military strategists of the. They were gathered to discuss the human problem. A holographic display floated in the center of the chamber, showing the positions of fleets and territories. The human coalition was marked in blue. They were small, their territory a tiny corner of the galaxy, but they had been fighting for 8 years now, and they were not dying. The human fleet is massing at the edge of the expanse, reported Warmind, the eldest of the council. It is the largest force they have ever assembled. 3,000 ships, supported by vessels from 4 allied species. Another Warmind, younger and eager, clicked his mandibles in contempt. 3,000 ships against our armadas. They are desperate. We will crush them as we have crushed all others. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the council. They had never lost a major battle. They did not know how to imagine defeat. Did not speak. She was reading the intelligence report, and something in it had caught her attention. Something that made her ancient heart pulse with an unfamiliar sensation. The human fleet was led by Cole. She remembered him. Of course she remembered him. 7 years he had spent in her prisons, her arenas, her torture chambers. She had watched recordings of his fights. She had read reports of his interrogations. She had ordered him broken 1,000 times. He had broken her torturers instead. Remembered the way he moved in the arena. Quick, efficient, deadly. He fought like he had nothing to lose because he had nothing to lose. He fought like death was a friend he would meet when he was ready, not a moment before. She remembered the reports from his cell, how he had refused to beg, refused to submit, refused to give them anything, how he had organized the other prisoners in secret, how he had escaped from a facility that no one had ever escaped from before. And she remembered what her guards had told her, the message Cole had sent before his escape. I am coming for the Queen. At the time she had dismissed it as empty words, the boasting of a desperate man. Humans were small, weak, short-lived. They were prey, not predators. One human could not threaten an empire. But that was before. Before Cole had returned to human space and become a symbol of resistance. Before he had formed the Unbroken and begun his campaign of terror against her forces. Before her warriors had started whispering his name in fear. My queen, prompted, nodding her silence. Looked up from the report. This human, Cole, what is his position in the fleet? He commands a special forces unit, replied. Approximately 3,000 warriors, a small portion of their total strength. He will not come with the main fleet. The council exchanged confused glances. My queen rose from her throne. She was enormous, 3 times the size of a normal warrior. Her carapace was covered in ceremonial markings, each one representing a victory, a conquest, a moment of glory. She had earned every mark through blood and fire. He will come for me directly, she said. He told my guards before his escape. He said he would return for me. I thought he was mad. I thought he was broken, speaking nonsense. She walked to the holographic display and stared at the tiny blue lights representing the human fleet. Somewhere in that swarm of ships was one human who had promised to kill her. I believe him now. The council shifted uneasily. They had never seen their queen like this. The Eternal did not worry. The Eternal did not fear. She conquered. She destroyed. She ruled. Triple the guard around my palace, commanded. Activate the planetary defense grid. Recall the elite warrior cast from the front lines. I want the best fighters in the Empire here, protecting this world. Hesitated. My queen, with respect, these measures seem excessive for one human. Turned to face her war mind. Her compound eyes gleamed in the dim light of the throne room. You have not seen what I have seen. You have not looked into his eyes. She moved closer to the old warrior, her massive form casting shadows across the floor. I have conquered 18 species. I have broken warriors and crushed armies. I have made worlds burn and stars weep, but I have never seen anything like Cole. Her voice dropped to something almost like a whisper. He does not know how to stop. He does not know how to surrender. He does not know how to die. I took everything from him. I tortured him. I starved him. I forced him to fight for his life every day for 7 years. And do you know what he did? He used it. Every wound, every scar, every moment of pain. He turned it all into fuel. The council was silent. They had never heard their queen speak like this about any enemy. He is coming, said. Not with their fleet. He will find another way. He will slip through our defenses, past our warriors, through every obstacle we put in his path, and he will come for me. She returned to her throne and settled onto it with a heavy sigh. When he arrives, I want to be ready. I want the best warriors in the Empire standing between me and that human. I want every advantage we can create. And if all of that is not enough, asked quietly. Was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was tired in a way her council had never heard. Then they will learn what happens when you create a monster and then set it free. The council dispersed to carry out her orders. Ships moved. Warriors deployed. The defenses around Prime grew stronger by the hour. The entire empire mobilized to protect its queen from one human. And somewhere in the void between stars, Cole was watching. He was waiting. He was planning. The Unbroken had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. They had studied Prime's defenses, mapped its weaknesses, identified targets. They had gathered allies and resources. They had trained for battles that most soldiers would call suicide. Cole stood on the bridge of his command ship, looking at holographic images of Prime. Grace stood beside him, as she always did now. She knows you are coming, Grace said. Good. Cole's voice was calm, almost soft. I want her to know. I want her to wait. I want her to feel what those prisoners felt. I want her to understand what it is like to know that something terrible is coming for you and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Grace looked at him. After all these years, she could still be surprised by the depth of his hatred and by the control he kept over it. The fleet will engage their armada tomorrow, she said. That is our window. Cole nodded. Then tomorrow we end this. He turned away from the display and walked toward his quarters. He had preparations to make, prayers to say for what little he still believed, letters to write for those who would not survive. Tomorrow he would fulfill the promise he had made on Epsilon Station. Tomorrow he would finish what he had started in the arena. Tomorrow he would teach the queen of the true meaning of fear. And she would learn it in blood. The Battle of Prime lasted 3 days. The human fleet, along with allied forces from 4 other species, engaged the armada in orbit around the enemy. It was the largest battle in the history of the galaxy. Thousands of ships clashed in the void, their weapons lighting up the darkness like artificial stars. The cost was terrible. Humanity lost 1/3 of its fleet in the first 12 hours. Ships burned and died, their crews scattered into the cold emptiness of space. For every vessel destroyed, 2 human ships fell. The admirals watching from their command centers began to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. But the battle in space was never the real war. Cole and the Unbroken dropped through the chaos in stealth shuttles. They were small ships, designed to be invisible, threading between burning warships and fields of debris. They were too busy fighting the fleet to notice them. That was exactly the plan. 2,700 soldiers, hit the ground on Prime in 3 separate waves. The first wave, led by Cole himself, targeted the capital city. Their mission was simple and impossible: reach the palace, kill the queen, end the war. The second wave, led by Grace Palmer, had a different objective. She took her forces to the Psychic Amplifier Network, the system that connected warriors to their queen. Without those amplifiers, the alien soldiers would lose their coordination, their unity, their purpose. The third wave spread across the planet to cause chaos. They attacked military bases, destroyed supply depots, cut communication lines. They made them think they were being invaded by an army instead of a few thousand soldiers. Cole's shuttle crashed 3 miles from the palace. The landing was hard, and 7 soldiers died before they even touched the ground. The rest pulled themselves from the wreckage and started moving. The capital city was a nightmare of alien architecture. Towers twisted toward the red sky. Streets curved in patterns that made no sense to human minds. And everywhere, there were warriors. The queen had concentrated her elite forces around the palace. Tens of thousands of the best fighters in the empire, sworn to die for their godmother. They fought with religious fury, throwing themselves at the human invaders without fear or hesitation. Cole lost soldiers with every block, every building, every stairway. He watched men and women he had trained fall beneath alien blades. He heard their screams over the communication channels, their last words, their final defiance. He kept moving. Grace's voice crackled through his earpiece 6 hours into the battle. "Amplifiers are down," she reported. "Repeat, amplifiers are down. They are fighting blind." Cole could see the effect immediately. The around him began to stumble, to hesitate. They had relied on their psychic link for so long that they did not know how to fight without it. Their movements became uncoordinated. Their tactics fell apart. "Push forward," Cole ordered, "now while they are confused." The Unbroken surged toward the palace. They were exhausted, wounded, running low on ammunition. But they could see their target now, the massive structure rising above the city like a monument to conquest. They could feel how close they were. By the time Cole reached the palace doors, he had 17 soldiers left. 17 out of 2,700. They breached the doors with explosives and charged inside. The palace was a maze of chambers and corridors, all of it designed to confuse and trap invaders. But Cole had studied the layouts recovered from captured ships. He knew where to go. The throne room doors were massive, carved from the bones of some enormous creature. 200 elite guards stood before them, the personal protectors of the queen. They were the best warriors they had ever produced, chosen at birth and trained for centuries. Cole raised his rifle. His armor was damaged. His body was bleeding from half a dozen wounds. He had been fighting for 12 hours without rest. He had never felt more alive. "For Epsilon Station," he said quietly, then louder, "for the fallen." He charged. The final battle was brutal beyond description. 17 humans against 200 elite, fighting in a corridor slick with blood. The Unbroken died around Cole, but they took dozens of the enemy with them. Who had survived Epsilon Station fell protecting Cole's flank. She had been with him since the beginning, one of the 7 who held the corridor. Now she died as she had lived, fighting to the last. Grant's nephew, who had joined the Unbroken to honor his uncle's memory, went down swinging 2 blades. He took 6 with him. One by one they fell. One by one they bought Cole seconds, meters, chances. When Cole finally reached the throne room, he was alone. Queen sat upon her throne, waiting for him. She was enormous, her ancient carapace covered in the markings of 300 years of conquest. Around her stood her final guard, 30 warriors who had sworn never to leave her side. Cole stood in the doorway. His rifle was empty. He held a combat knife in one hand and a captured blade in the other. His face was covered in blood, some his own, most not. You came, said. Her voice filled the chamber, deep and ancient. I told you I would. You are one human, wounded, exhausted. Your soldiers are dead. You cannot possibly believe you will survive this. Cole smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a man who had stopped being afraid a long time ago. I have been dying since Epsilon Station, he said. I just have not gotten around to finishing yet. The Queen's Guard attacked. Cole moved through them like water through stones, flowing around their attacks, striking at weak points, never stopping. He had spent 7 years learning how to kill. Every moment of torture, every arena fight, every lesson from Grace had led to this. He took wounds, a blade across his leg, a claw through his shoulder. Blood poured from him, but he did not slow down. He could not slow down, not now, not when he was so close. The guards fell around him, 20, 10, 5, 3. Then he was facing the Queen. Rose from her throne. She was a warrior herself, despite her age. She had killed challengers and traitors and enemies. She had bathed in the blood of conquered species. She was faster than Cole, stronger, better armored. None of it mattered. Cole thought of Maria Vance, who had died laughing at impossible odds. He thought of Danny, who had carried a child on his back while fighting aliens. He thought of 7 years of torture, of watching his friends die, of promising that it would all mean something. He ducked under the Queen's first strike and drove his blade into her leg. She screamed and swung at him, her massive limbs cutting through the air. He rolled beneath her, came up behind her, and plunged his knife into the gap between her shoulder plates. The Queen spun, throwing him across the room. Cole hit the wall hard enough to crack ribs. He pulled himself up and charged again. They fought across the throne room, knocking over ancient trophies and sacred artifacts. The Queen was wounded now, slowing. Cole was dying on his feet, running on nothing but hatred and determination. He found the spot Grace had told him about. The gap beneath the throat where the neural cluster was most vulnerable. The place where a blade could end everything. Cole drove his knife home with both hands. Queen the Eternal, conqueror of 18 species, ruler of an empire spanning 40 star systems, died with a human's blade in her throat and a human's eyes staring into her own. Across the planet, across the system, across the entire empire, the effect was immediate. The psychic link that connected every to their queen snapped like a broken string. Warriors who had fought with religious fury suddenly stopped. Some surrendered. Some fled. Some simply stood there, lost and empty, waiting for commands that would never come. The war was not over. It would take years to fully dismantle the empire, to free the conquered species, to establish lasting peace. But the back of the war machine was broken in that moment, in that throne room, by one human who refused to die. Cole walked out of the palace as the sun rose over Prime. The red sky was turning orange, the first light of dawn spreading across a world that would never be the same. Grace met him at the gates. Her own armor was covered in blood and ash. She had lost most of her soldiers taking down the amplifiers, but she was alive and she was there. She looked at Cole, at the wounds covering his body, at the blood dripping from his hands. She understood without asking. "It is done," Cole said. Grace stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. He held her tight, feeling the warmth of another human being for what felt like the first time in years. Behind them, the palace burned. Around them, warriors knelt in surrender. Above them, the human fleet hung in orbit, battered but victorious. The story would be told for generations. In military academies, they would study Cole's tactics. In alien worlds freed from rule, they would speak of the human who had saved them. In what remained of the civilization, they would whisper of the demon who had killed their god. But Cole did not care about legends. He cared about the people he had lost, the friends who had died, the years that had been taken from him. He cared about the promise he had made at Epsilon Station, standing over the bodies of his squad. He had promised that their deaths would mean something. Looking at the burning palace, feeling Grace's heartbeat against his chest, Cole allowed himself to believe that he had kept that promise. The war was over, the legend was complete, and somewhere among the stars, the spirits of the fallen could finally rest. Cole, the human who would not die, had done what he set out to do. He had taught the Queen of the meaning of fear. He had shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of. And now, at last, he could begin to heal.